Good afternoon, everyone. This is the fourth edition of the Misco Hill Inspiring Innovation Center, Mendon Upton Regional School District Inspiring Careers Interview Series, sponsored in part by American Student Assistance, our partner with the Inspired Innovation Center. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are pleased to be joined by Dr. Samantha Russak and her colleagues from Southwick Zoo and Earth Ltd for an exploration of careers in zoology, animal care, and all the related fields. We were also joined by several of our students, our future zoologists, perhaps veterinarians, or perhaps they'll be learning about a new career today that they haven't even thought of. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. Hopefully you can hear us okay with our masks on. We're still trying to be COVID conscious around here, especially working with our animals. Safety is our number one priority. If it becomes an issue, we can kind of swap out, make sure we're at a safe distance from each other and kind of peel the mask off. But I know I can talk pretty loud, so hopefully it won't be an issue.
Comes with presenting, right?
Yes, exactly. It's a talking loud and projecting is a very important educator skill to have.
So can you talk a little bit about, your respective roles at the zoo and, how you came into the positions you're in right now?
Sure. So I'll start. So I'm currently the director of education here at Southwick Zoo. And it says Earth Limited on our screen there. That is our nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit arm of the zoo that really focuses on any of the education and conservation work that we do here. So Earth and Southwick Zoo kind of go hand in hand, especially when it comes to things like this with our educational programs. I've been here for about 5.5 years now. And I kind of came to it a little bit on an untraditional path, meaning that I originally thought I was going to stay in academia and be a professor and continuing to do animal research. So I went to school for zoology, the study of animal behavior, and I actually added an anthropology major. So anthropology is the study of man, but that also includes the study of primates, so apes and monkeys, because we are a member of that primate order. And I fell in love with chimpanzees especially. So that's what my research started focusing on. And I went on to graduate school and got my master's and PhD in studying chimpanzee behavior. So that was my plan. I was going to keep at that and stay teaching. But then I started to work more with animals, particularly in a zoo setting, as a way to just kind of do something different and fun. And I fell in love with that a little bit more than I did with my teaching at the time. So I kind of switched gears and started as a volunteer and then a part-time keeper and then a full-time keeper at a zoo in Arizona. And then was able to find my way back here to Massachusetts, where my brother and his family live, so closer to family. And now my job combines all of the stuff I learned as a zookeeper, which is taking care of the animals and giving them enrichment and knowing about their behavior, as well as my education. So I'm also in charge of our education programs and making sure that we really reach our community and our visitors and help them understand why we have the animals here and why it's important for us to learn and care about the animals to help save the environment. So I think that's the quickest version I can give, but I'll turn it over to Lauren. She can let you know her path.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I've been at Southwick Zoo for about, I think 8 years or so now. Yeah, so a while. And I started here as an intern, and I worked hard enough that they wound up liking me and had a seasonal position open up, and I stuck around and worked for free long enough that they hired me eventually. So my title is I'm the head education coordinator here at the Earth Discovery Center, and I also am the lead reptile keeper for all of our exhibit reptiles. So kind of my role is to help manage that collection of reptiles. So choosing what species are appropriate for our exhibits, what species are maybe not fitting into our collection so well anymore. So determining that, making those types of decisions, as well as putting together habitats. So you wind up having a little bit of exhibit design in there. I'm sort of all over the place.
Well, and something that's interesting about both of your career paths is that you've done a lot of different roles that have informed just the different areas of not only animal behavior, but also zoo operations, the education piece. One thing I'm kind of curious about is, is there a moment or is there a time or a story that you can think about that made you realize, yeah, this is what you wanted to do for a career? Whether it seems like it's a very experience directly with the animals are really super important. But is there a moment or a story or an interaction that you had with an animal that really kind of shaped your decision to make this, move it from, or like you said, like an intern and kind of like a hobby and doing it for free, but to like, hey, this is what I want to commit my life to?
All right, well, sort of going off of that, I was floating around in space with not really sure with what I wanted to do with my life. I had worked in a pet store for a very long time. I've loved animals from a young age, and I've definitely had that passion for taking care of animals. But I thought, what the heck can I do with that? There's limited options, and I don't want to be a veterinarian. So I worked in the pet store. I then did some random job that I hated, quit it, and I came to be an intern. So I definitely knew that I really did want to try and get my foot in the door. But I think something that really made me stick here is when I joined, we were pretty small in our Earth Discovery Center, and there wasn't really an enrichment program. And enrichment is things that stimulate an animal's natural behavior. It engages them, it keeps them mentally stimulated, physically stimulated. And a lot of our animals in the Discovery Center didn't receive enrichment on a daily basis. And as an intern, I started trying to ask my supervisor, well, can I do this? I came with a lot of ideas. I did a lot of outside research, and really starting to implement this enrichment program and seeing that I could really make a difference at this facility for the welfare of the animals, I think kind of cemented my role in the eyes of my superiors and also, for myself.
Lauren, so can you talk a little bit more about what it means for animals to have enrichment? Like, what are some things that you design? What does that look like?
It can be as simple as a paper bag all the way up to something that we may go out and build. Some of my coworkers call me a lumberjack now because I'm very good with a saw and, go out into the woods and cut down a tree and build something with it. But enrichment is really going to depend on the species of animal that you're dealing with and also the individual animal. So we have parrots that are in our Discovery Center. Parrots are extremely intelligent. They're very capable of using their beaks and their feet to get into more complex enrichment. But then we have one parrot who really, if it's too hard, it's lost on him. So for him, a paper bag with some shredded paper in it is going to make his day. And he's going to spend a long time using that form of enrichment. On the other hand, we also have animals that are going to use different senses. So you really need to think about the natural history or what this animal normally does in the wild in order to craft enrichment that's going to stimulate them. So scent enrichment can be a really big thing for a lot of animals. We don't use our nose very much as people. I mean, we can smell something, sure. But when you think about how some of these animals are getting around in their world just using their nose, well, geez, a tiny little sprinkle of cinnamon on an artificial grass turf is going to be a big deal, people here. So even something so simple, you just sometimes it's experimentation and but like I said, just knowing your individual animals and knowing the species is what makes it enriching.
Well, and it's kind of hard to tell from, the mask, but, Samantha, I noticed your face kind of light up and nod when you mentioned different ones of the parrots. I know we've talked about this, but do you find that like different animals or different, your parrots all have different kind of personalities or personas that, would surprise you?
Yeah, definitely. So when you work this closely with animals, you definitely see that they each have their own personality and their own quirks and their own likes and their own dislikes. And sometimes it's really easy to figure out why they like something or why they dislike something or someone. And sometimes it's really hard to figure out why they like or dislike something. And that's part of our job as their caretakers, is to figure out those interests and needs and make sure their needs are met. But you definitely get to know these animals on a very personal level. You're responsible for their care. And I do want to point out, though, even though we are working so closely with these animals and develop these bonds, they're still wild animals, right? So they still have their wild instincts. They're not domesticated. They're not like a cat or a dog at home. So they rely on us for our care, but we still have to keep that in mind and keep, respectful boundaries with our animals as well, so that we're, respecting who they are or what they are as an animal.
So I've got another couple questions, but I just want to let our student panels know, if you want to ask a question at any point, just drop a note in the chat and I'll bring you in to ask the question. And we kind of talked upon this earlier. So, I'm a student. I think I want to go to a career in animals. What are some, and you kind of touched upon this, what are some training pathways, or what might I be thinking about in school right now that might help me? Even beyond, I think, Lauren, you talked about with internships, but how might I get the experience that I need or the knowledge that I need in order to start this career in either zoology, animal biology, zookeeping, etc.?
Yeah, so first I want to say that there are actually a ton of careers working with animals. So I know when I was in school, I didn't really realize that at all. So I assumed, like many people, that if I wanted to work with animals, really my only option was to be a veterinarian. And yeah, Lauren's nodding her head. But especially now, there are so many, even college programs that have expanded. So I see, and Cameron said wants to be a wildlife biologist. So that's an option. You can be a field researcher. You can work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. You can work in a zoo or a sanctuary. You could be a wildlife rehabber. You could work in a lab. You can be a vet, but you can be an exotic vet and work at a zoo, or you can be a domestic vet and work with cats and dogs, or you can be a farm vet and work with livestock. So there are so many more things that you can do if you are interested in animal behavior. And I did not know that when I was going to school. And you can also do things that are kind of animal adjacent. So, working with conservation biology or environmental science or sustainability, where you're focusing more on the kind of impact of the environment and where they live, which obviously affects the animals, but maybe not the animals themselves. So there are definitely a lot of paths to choose. I think the best way to figure out what path you want is to start trying to get as many experiences as possible. So unfortunately, working with animals comes with a little bit of a safety risk. So many positions have a minimum age requirement. So that is going to be a hurdle for you guys that are interested so young, but don't be discouraged, because there are still opportunities that you guys can do. So you can volunteer at shelters. A lot of shelters let you socialize, which is a fancy term for playing with cats and dogs, or helping clean kennels and taking dogs for walks while they're there. So just animal experience. There are some farms that look for younger volunteers. There are programs like here at Southwick Zoo, we have a summer camp program at the zoo. So you're learning, but you're around the animals. And then once you get to that age in your teens where you meet those minimum age requirements, just start volunteering and interning wherever you can. I don't think anyone in this field especially started with a paid position. We all put in our time as an unpaid volunteer. So it's really just about looking for different opportunities in different situations. I don't know if you wanted to add to that or.
No, just to echo what she said, working for free is the way in.
And so just because we're on the topic, so we've got zoo camps that may be available this if everything, fingers crossed, might be available this summer.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We believe we were actually able to run them last summer as well. We had to reduce our capacity so we could make sure people were spread out. Masks were worn at all times. Lots of hand sanitizing, temperature checks, all of those safety measures in place. But we were still able to run our program mostly because most of it is outside. So there is ample opportunity to spread out and not be in close quarters. We also have another program we're hoping to be able to have this summer called Junior Zookeeping. And that's a program where you kind of get to be a zookeeper for a few hours in the morning. I won't say the full day, but it's a few hours in the morning. It's a good experience. And so we take you through, for a group of animals, so herbivores or primates, what it's like to feed and prepare a diet, what it's like to clean an enclosure, what it's like to create enrichment that Lauren was talking about. So kind of not all of the parts of zookeeping, but the really main parts, you get to see what that's like and see if that's something you might be interested in doing.
And then are there any sort of other learning opportunities at the center where you could come for programs or anything like that?
So right now we're a little bit limited. You can see that we have lots of fun stuff on the wall behind us that we've been working on. Unfortunately, this particular building is small, so we were unable to have that open. We probably will not be able to have it open, definitely not right away this season. But if you come to the zoo, we offer educational presentations throughout the day. Outside of this building, we have a bird show arena where we do presentations about our ambassador birds. And those are all included in admission. So they're not an extra cost. Anyone can pop in, stop by, learn about our animals. We have a lot of docent volunteers, so adult volunteers in red shirts that are very knowledgeable around the zoo, that are always happy to answer questions and give out information. In normal times, we have outreach programs called Zoo Mobiles, where we do visit schools and libraries. We've been doing a lot more of those virtually this year. So broadcasting from this building, but connecting through Zoom with different schools and classrooms. It's not quite the same experience as having the animals right there with you, but it's as close as we can get, and it's still a really fun opportunity. So we don't have any other formal classes or anything like that going on. We just don't have the space. We would love it if we could build a bigger education center, but maybe in the future.
Well, and what was really interesting too, I guess my next question is just kind of how did COVID shift your thinking about operating a zoo? Because the zoo's a business too, right? You need to keep it sustainable and funding, and even if you find that you don't like necessarily working with animals as much as you thought, there are still other opportunities like on the business end. So can you talk a little bit about how the zoo changed the concept of a zoo, or change you made? The one that comes to mind is like the drive-through zoo, which I thought was brilliant, that you've done to adjust for COVID to make sure that people still have access.
Yeah, so especially with Southwick Zoo, we're privately owned, so we don't receive any funding from the government or from outside. So we really do rely on all of the proceeds from admission, from people visiting, to be able to pay for the food and utilities that feed the animals and run the zoo. And it's not cheap. These animals have very specific needs and diets that we need to account for. And then just, regular things like electricity and heat and water, those costs add up when you're running such a big facility. So we did have to get really creative with how do we get people safely here so that we can, have that funding and still, offer them an educational experience seeing these animals that they might not see otherwise. And so you mentioned our drive-through. That was one of our creative endeavors. The zoo itself is not set up to be a drive-through. That was never the purpose or intent of the zoo. But we went through and found a pathway with existing, paths and roads in the zoo that would work, and made sure it would be safe. And it was a really great success. So we're actually going to be bringing that back this year. In addition to, we're hoping to open as a walkthrough again as well. But at the very least, we'll start with the drive-through, which offers, you're still seeing, I want to say, about 80% of the zoo. You're really not missing much. from the safety and comfort of your car. And what's nice too is there's an audio tour that's going to go along with it so that you can learn about the animals and learn some facts, which if you're walking through the zoo, if you don't take the time to read the signs, you might not learn that extra bit of information. And then, like I mentioned, just, switching our outreach programs to more virtual programs instead of in person, things like that. We've tried to do some online fundraising and increase our presence on social media just to increase awareness and be able to offer, some of the educational bits of information and videos of the animals just to kind of keep people remembering and thinking about the zoo. So when it is safe, they can come back to visit.
That's awesome. And we're looking forward to your, as your neighbor in the town of Mendon, we're really looking forward to having you back open again. But until that can be done safely, I think it's really awesome that you folks had figured out a creative way to get all of us continuing access, and then add those enhancements, right? With like the audio component, where I know that, when I visit zoos, sometimes I don't always read all the signs, so that added piece is fantastic. We have a student question coming in. So Miss Edmonds, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead and ask the question.
I was wondering, what is your favorite animal to work with at the zoo?
Ooh, good question. I'm going to let Lauren go first if you have an answer, though, because I've been talking a bit.
Well, usually I just pick my favorite animal of the day when somebody asks me that question. So my favorite animal today is we have a yellow-naped Amazon parrot named Brock. And then he came to us after living in his previous home he was 21 years old at the time.
Wow.
So it was kind of a big life-altering change for him to come to our zoo. He came here, I think, about 7 years ago. And he had a lot of trust issues. Parrots typically bond really closely with one person. In the wild, a lot of parrots will mate for life, and they spend all of their time with that mate. They forage for food, they sleep together, they fly together. So I think for Brock, it was very devastating to have lost his mate that he'd been with for life, his owner. And, it's taken 7 long years of trust building with Brock, and I'm his favorite person. Yeah.
Yeah, you can say that.
But it's also important that he's able to work with other people. So in the last year, I think he's gone a little COVID crazy too with all of us in here, and we've had some behavioral issues with him. So just trying to continue to work through and find ways that he can continue to grow and live a happy life here in the Discovery Center is, I don't know, just great to see. And every time he has a step of progress, it just warms my heart. He's just a great bird. So he's my favorite today.
And Samantha, what about you?
It's always hard to pick a favorite. It really is. I like Lauren's idea of picking a favorite for the day, but I think one of my go-tos is we have an ambassador African crested porcupine named Pickles. And he's one of my favorite animals to use, especially on programs, because he's such a different animal that people aren't expecting. He had to be hand raised because his mom wasn't raising him. So we try and let the animals raise their own babies whenever possible, just to develop those natural behaviors. And so they don't get too attached to people. But he wasn't being taken care of. So we had to actually step in and raise him. And that was before I was here. But once I started getting here, he's very trusting of people that work with him. Especially if you have a chunk of sweet potato, he'll be your best friend. But he thinks he's he's almost like a spiky lap dog. So he likes getting neck scratches and attention. But he's also super intelligent. So it's been great to see, what he can do. We do some painting enrichment with him. So he's trained to hit a PVC pipe that has a paintbrush in it. So it's called target training. He's trained to target or hit something particular, and that makes a stroke on the canvas. We also sometimes let him just run in the paint and then run on the canvas, so you get little footprints. But Lauren was talking about enrichment that we give him. He's probably one of my biggest challenges, because porcupines have really big teeth. They're rodents, so they have very strong front incisors that can chew through anything. And so, the simple box or bag that we might give another animal, he's through that in 2 seconds. So it's not very enriching for him. It doesn't make him slow down or use any of his brain. So coming up with things for him to do is always a bit of a challenge. And I think that's what makes him one of my favorites as well, is he's not an easy animal.
We did have, and I don't know if this is possible, I know I'm putting you on the spot, so no's a perfectly acceptable answer, but we did have a request for an animal cameo, if that's possible. I don't know if it's...
Yeah.
Right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Awesome.
So Brock is actually watching us now.
Let me get it.
So this is Lauren's just going to get a little bit, get a sunflower seed as a little bit of a treat
Okay.
to thank him. Now, if I had gotten up to go get Brock, he would not step up for me. So when Lauren says that she is his favorite person, she really means it. And I'm actually going to move over just a little bit so he doesn't get
Oh, you don't want to
nervous.
get bit by a parrot today?
No, so he doesn't
Oh,
get
wow, look at
nervous.
him.
Here he is. This is
Brock?
So that's Brock in the flesh.
Yep.
So as Lauren said, he's a yellow naped Amazon parrot. So he gets that name from the yellow feathers on the back of his neck. And so he's considered, no, go up there. He's considered a medium-sized parrot. So you might have noticed that Lauren kind of adjusted. So he was trying to climb up onto her shoulder. Now, parrots or birds on shoulders is something we commonly see people do. It's not a behavior that we want to encourage. So that actually puts the parrot really close to your face. And he has a very strong beak on that face of his. So if they got scared or spooked, that could, potentially be a very dangerous situation. So we pay very close attention to the behavior of our animals. It's a very important part of our job, is to notice these little things and to offer them a solution, right? So we're going to make it so that he can't actually go up onto her shoulder. She kind of moved her arm a little bit, and he is intelligent enough to understand what that meant. And then she's also going to reward him. She's giving him little pieces of seeds right now for being calm and staying, on her arm where we want him to be.
Hey,
Buddy.
I wanted to say hello.
He usually does. I ran out of seeds here.
Oh.
Do you want to grab me a couple
Yeah,
more?
let me go get a few more seeds.
He's
So,
very excited to see me today. I just got back from my weekend. So
All right. So that's going to be hard for him, huh?
He likes other staff members. He's grown. He's grown up. He has another staff member that's here on the days that I'm not, that he's comfortable enough with her. He'll let her pick him up. And Brock, can you say hello? Hello. Good job.
Oh. That's awesome. What else? Hello's pretty impressive. Does he have is he mimicking, or does he have a range of words that he can say, or how's that work?
This species, the yellow-naped Amazon, is known as one of the top 10 talkers, but Brock is a pretty quiet guy. So
Parrot a few words. Okay.
Yeah, he's our greeting party here in the building, though. He says hello basically on repeat.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty cute. He does have a couple other things. I don't know if it'll show from here, but can you wave to everybody here? There you go.
So panel, any other questions from our future zoologists, animals? We're shy today.
We don't bite, only Brock.
Yeah, our beaks aren't as big as Brock's there.
So while we wait for our crew to maybe work up a little bit more courage, I'd love to have another student question. I'm curious, have the animals noticed the changes that you've had to make in order to get through the pandemic? How have they been responding? I'm sure it's been a little weird to go from regular contact with humans or sighted humans to none at all. How's that impacted them?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. We're going to put Brock back on his perch so he doesn't get too overstimulated. We want to make sure we, end at a point where he's still calm so he doesn't get too excited or too stressed out. It has been I think it was more of an adjustment for the people than the animals, but we definitely noticed some changes. We were very cautious when we first had to start wearing masks because some of the animals react differently if there's something covering your face and they can't see or, recognize you. But I think overall they got used to that pretty quickly. When we opened the drive-through, we were very carefully watching to make sure the animals weren't stressed out by having more vehicles in the zoo. They're used to just a few of the zookeeping vehicles. But now there's a steady stream of cars, every couple of nights. And honestly, I think for them, it was a new source of enrichment. Like it piqued their curiosity the first couple of times. They're like, what's going on? And now they're just used to it. And it's like background noise. So I think, some of the animals really do like when we have a lot of visitors and it's noisy and kids are screaming, and they really thrive on that energy. So, we noticed that some of them were seeking more attention from care staff, from us, when the public weren't able to be here. But other than that, they've all, thankfully adjusted very well. I think better than a lot of the people have adjusted. We're still working things out and figuring out our schedules and things like that and making it happen. But animals are very resilient, so they don't get a lot of the credit that they deserve. They're pretty adaptable. There are some species that get more easily stressed than others that we pay very close attention to. But for the most part, I think they're doing well.
And I just wanted to add in regarding the masks. And we all thought, Jesus, these animals are going to freak out. We have an animal who can't stand the sight of a blanket, God forbid. We have a bird who, if you have wearing a hair elastic on your wrist, it's over. End of the world type situations here. And none of our animals have shown the slightest care about a mask, which really makes you think about how these animals interact in the wild with their environment. Yep. And a lot of them are paying attention to, we have monkeys who are going to pay attention to the way your eyes move. They watch your eyes for behavior cues, or your body language, the way you move, probably the way we smell. None of that stuff changed. It was just, now we got something over our mouth.
Nice. We have a question coming in from Rory. Rory, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
So when you get a new animal, do most animals need to, are some animals comfortable as soon as they come in, or do most of the animals need to kind of be helped?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it really depends on the animal and the situation that it came from beforehand. So today, in today's world, most of the animals here at the zoo were either born at the zoo, came from another zoological facility, or were in a situation where like Brock was a pet and they were donated to us, or turned over to us when they could no longer be taken care of. And so all of those situations set that animal up differently, right? So if that animal is very used to being taken care of by people or by one particular person, they might be, as Lauren mentioned, Brock was a little bit attached to his previous owner. So it took some time for him to be comfortable when he got here and had to meet new people. Other animals don't seem to care as much. As long as they have food in front of them and, a warm place to sleep, they're pretty content. So it's very dependent on the animal. That's a really good question.
Yeah, and the species too. Some species are just known for being more high strung than others. But I think that all the animals would experience a small amount of anxiety being in a new situation, just like we would. Yeah. But depending on the species and the individual, how quickly they can recover from that anxiety just really varies.
Well, and that's, and that's all due to the quality care that you all provide too. So, you reap what you sow. Connor, you have a question. Connor, go ahead.
How many different species of animals do you guys have at the zoo?
Very good question. So that's ever changing. But right now we have over 850 individual animals, and they represent 160 different species. So we do have quite a variety, and that's ranging from the littlest beetle all the way up to, our rhinos and giraffes. So, and everything in between. So we have a very large variety of animals here. And, that means we have to know about all different kinds of animal behaviors and diets and habitat needs and all of that. So there's a lot of information that goes into our jobs here.
So we are coming up on the top of our time here. We just want to thank you so much, Samantha and Lauren, for sharing your time and insight here. What I'm curious about is, what do you have any closing thoughts for students? What's kind of, we talked about some of the opportunities that are going to come up with the zoo in the next couple months, the camps, the junior zookeeper program. But what's one thing that a student could do today or this week or this month that might get them better prepared, even if it's just something, like for caring for the environment? What's something that they could do right now to start their journey on their career in this field?
Get a bird feeder. Start paying attention to what's around you. I think that sometimes even us in the zoo life, we're around exotic animals that aren't around us all the time. So we sort of overlook some of those native species that if you just open up your eyes in your backyard or in a walk in the woods, you're going to see all kinds of species that people from other countries might come here and say, wow, that's a giant blue bird. Have you guys ever seen how pretty that blue jay is? We take it for granted. So I think that there's a lot of really neat animals in our backyards that you can start familiarizing yourself with, learn basic knowledge on those guys. And I don't know, I think you kind of have a leg up in a way. You know what's around you already. You know something else about animals.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar along those lines, like in your backyard or, there, especially in this area of Massachusetts, there are so many Audubon reserves and sanctuaries with hiking trails. So, especially as it's hopefully starting to continue to warm up, this time of year, it's a great time to go outside and take a notebook with you and just write down what you see. Did you find a new insect? Did you find a cool looking plant? Did you see a bird? And there are so many resources online that you can use to then identify those creatures and start learning about them. So I think just making yourself more aware. And then you might find, you really love frogs. And so you want to work with frogs. Or maybe, you originally thought that, you don't like snakes, but you've seen a couple now and you're like really fascinated by them and want to learn more and you become a reptile lover. I mean, you might find something that you never thought of before that interests you. The other thing with backyards, if you're able to, again, when it warms up a little bit, but creating like a pollinator garden is another really a fun thing you can do if you have the space in your backyard. So do a little bit of research into what native plants and flowers grow in this area and create a little garden. And soon enough, you'll have butterflies and bees visiting. Good bees. I know some people don't like bees, but they're really important for the environment, to pollinate and keep our natural environment healthy and thriving. So just little things like that. And then, if you care about conservation and sustainability, little things you can do at home. I know we talked about this before, but turning lights off when you're not in the room to save some energy, trying to take shorter showers so you're not using as much water, recycling, using a reusable water bottle or a bag. All of those little things do actually add up and make an impact on our environment.
Well, Lauren Smith, that's a really excellent advice. And I don't know if our panelists might be interested in some future projects, but I'm just even thinking, we've got quite a bit of woods behind us here at Misco Hill, perhaps putting on a wildlife cam, combining that bird feeder. I put one up recently at my house because I live adjacent to some Audubon land. But with, we have some deer out in our backyard, but it would be curious to see, what lives alongside us here at Misco Hill. And then perhaps we could put that camera up near the pollinator garden as well. That's really incredible. So I don't know, does that sound interesting to any of you? Anybody interested in maybe helping me put that together? Awesome. So I think we may have a spring project for ourselves. Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. So if you're watching at home or watching afterwards, make sure you visit Southwick Zoo. They're such a great community partner. And if you see Samantha or Lauren in your travels, make sure you say hello. So again, thank you, Samantha, Lauren, for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Oh, I have one more question.
Oh, we have one more question.
Yeah.
Last one from the top ropes. Go ahead.
So like I don't know if any of like them like recognize me, but I am Chris's son.
Yeah. Hello, how are you?
Good.
Oh, so we got the family connection going on. All right. Thanks for being here, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Did you have a question or you just wanted to say hi?
No, I just wanted to say hi.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, we love, so that's one of the nice things about Southwick Zoo is we are very much involved with the community. So we see a lot of familiar faces year to year come visit us. We try and connect with all the schools in the area. So we love, thank you so much for having us on and doing this. We love connecting with our local community and our students here. And it's always great to have a student in our camp or junior zookeeping program come back a few years later, or come back more than a few years later as an intern in college and say, I remember when I was at Southwick's camp, and now they're back as an intern. And it's great to see how they progress, but that they've kept that passion for animals the entire time.
Awesome. Chris, thanks so much for being here. And again, thank you to the panelists of our students. We're glad you're here. Look forward to working on the project. So for the Misco Hill Inspired Innovation Center and the Mendon Upton Regional School District, I'm Dave Quinn.